It was just after 5 when Isaac Porter's rusted-out pickup coughed to a stop at the edge of Route 6, the sky burning orange above the open fields behind him. His 6-year-old daughter, Nora, was in the back seat, humming to herself as she colored on the back of a grocery receipt with a stubby crayon. "Daddy," she said, not looking up. "Why did the car burp?" Isaac grinned tiredly. "It's had a long day, just like us." He reached for the thermos in the cup holder and took a sip of now lukewarm coffee. He'd just finished a 10-hour shift as a mechanic, and the second he'd picked Nora up from her after-school program, he'd promised her ice cream. It had been a long week. Her birthday was in 3 days, and he still hadn't figured out how he was going to afford even a small celebration. Just as he was about to turn the key again, he saw the flash of hazard lights a few yards ahead. A sleek black sedan sat on the shoulder, hood popped, steam rising. A woman stood beside it, pacing in heels that definitely weren't made for gravel. He got out of his truck, Nora peeking through the window behind him. "Stay here," he said, giving her the dad look. "I'll be right back." As he approached the car, the woman turned and he froze. She was stunning. Long dark hair swept into a low twist, sharp cheekbones, and eyes that made his brain short-circuit for a second. She looked like she belonged on the cover of one of those fashion magazines Nora always tried to copy hairstyles from. "Hey," he called out. "Car trouble?" She turned to him, clearly frustrated. "It just died. No warnings, nothing. I've been trying to get a hold of roadside assistance for the last 30 minutes, but there's no signal out here." "Yeah, service is spotty near the cornfields," he said with a half-smile. "Mind if I take a look?" She hesitated, then nodded and stepped aside. Isaac leaned over the engine and poked around, wiping his hands on the rag he always kept in his back pocket. "Battery's fine. This looks electrical. You're not going anywhere tonight unless you get a tow." "Perfect," she muttered under her breath, looking genuinely defeated. "Listen," he said, standing up. "I know this is weird, but I've got my daughter in the truck. We were headed into town anyway. I can give you a ride somewhere safe. There's a diner about 10 minutes from here. You can get a coffee, call whoever you need." She studied him, her gaze flickering back to the old pickup. "I promise I'm not a serial killer," he added quickly. "And my daughter's in the back coloring unicorns." That made her laugh. Just a small breath of one, but it softened her face. "Okay," she said cautiously. "Thank you. I'm Helena. Helena James. Isaac Porter." She slid into the passenger seat of his truck with surprising grace, crossing her legs as if she hadn't just stepped into a vehicle held together by hope and duct tape. "Hi," Nora said, looking up from her drawing. "I drew a rainbow squirrel." Helena blinked. "That's the most beautiful rainbow squirrel I've ever seen." Nora beamed. "Daddy says I'm going to be famous one day." Isaac started the truck, relieved it didn't stall this time. Helena sat quietly for a minute, glancing around at the worn dashboard, the cracked leather seats, the little sunflower air freshener hanging from the mirror. "You were headed to town?" she finally asked. "Yeah," he said. "Promised Nora ice cream. You can join us if you want." She raised an eyebrow at him. "Ice cream before dinner?" Nora leaned forward from the back. "Daddy says sometimes rules are meant to be bent." Helena laughed again, softer this time. "Well, I can't argue with that." They pulled into the small-town diner, the kind with flickering neon signs and a waitress who called everyone Han. Isaac helped Nora out of the truck, then opened the door for Helena without thinking. Inside, they slid into a booth. Nora immediately opened the menu like it mattered. Isaac already knew she was going to order the same vanilla cone with sprinkles. Helena ordered coffee. Isaac got a burger he probably couldn't afford. "So," he asked, trying not to stare at her too long, "what were you doing out here? You don't seem like a local." She hesitated. "I was. Scouting properties. For an investment," she said quickly. "Just business." He nodded. "Well, you picked a great night to break down." The waitress brought their orders, and for a while, they just ate. It was surprisingly easy. Helena didn't act like she was better than him. She listened to Nora talk about her imaginary pet flamingo, and when she excused herself to the restroom, she returned with a small plush toy from the claw machine. Nora's face lit up like it was Christmas morning. "Thank you," she shouted, hugging it close. Helena smiled, but her eyes were on Isaac. He drove her to a small hotel on the edge of town afterward. She gave him a card, just her name and a number. "I'll arrange to have my car towed in the morning," she said. "Thank you again. For the ride. And everything else." "No problem," he said, trying not to sound disappointed it was over. As she reached for the door handle, she paused. "Isaac." Yeah, I really like tonight. He blinked. Even with the rainbow squirrel? Especially with the rainbow squirrel. She stepped out, and for a second, he just sat there, staring at her figure as she walked away under the glow of the streetlights. Nora yawned in the back seat. Daddy? Yeah, baby. Do you think she'll come back? He looked at the hotel door, then up at the stars. I hope so. The sky had turned steel gray by the time Isaac walked through the door of the auto shop the next morning, his boots tracking in fine dust from the gravel lot. The fluorescent lights above buzzed faintly, casting a sterile glow over the rows of half-gutted vehicles and stacked tires. He nodded toward Rick, the shop's owner, who was hunched over the hood of a dented sedan, grumbling under his breath about people who think oil changes happen once every 5 years. Isaac clocked in silently and shrugged on his coveralls, already feeling the strain in his shoulders from the day ahead. He hadn't stopped thinking about Helena since he dropped her off. There was something about the way she had looked at him like she saw more than a guy trying to keep his daughter's world from falling apart. But she hadn't called. He didn't expect her to. By midday, he was elbow-deep in a busted radiator when the shop phone rang. Rick grabbed it, grunted a few words, then called over. Isaac, some lady wants to talk to you. Sounds fancy. Isaac wiped his hands and took the receiver. Yeah, Mr. Porter, came Helena's voice, clear and composed. I need a favor. He blinked, caught off guard. Sure. What's going on? I had the car towed to your shop this morning. I'm still in town, and I'd like your honest opinion before I decide whether to fix it or replace it. All right. I'll take a look in a few. You nearby? I'm at the cafe across the street. I'll wait. He hung up and headed out, his heart beating a little faster than it needed to. The bell above the cafe door chimed as he stepped inside. Helena was seated by the window, her blazer draped over the back of the chair and a slice of lemon tart untouched in front of her. You came, she said, her eyes finding his immediately. I said I would. He pulled out the chair across from her. You didn't have to come in person for this. I wanted to, she said, then glanced down. And I wanted to see you again. Before he could respond, she added, tell me the truth. Is that car worth saving? He leaned back. Honestly, it'll run again, but it's going to cost more than it's worth. You'd be better off selling it for parts and starting fresh. She nodded slowly as if she already knew, but had needed to hear it from someone who wouldn't lie to her. Thanks, she said. I'll arrange to have it taken off your hands. He studied her for a moment. Even dressed simply, she carried herself with a sort of deliberate grace. There was something more behind her calm exterior, something guarded. You said you were here for business, he said carefully. Still working on that? She met his gaze directly. I am. But I've decided to extend my trip. A few more days, at least. Town that charming? Not the town, she said. Just some of the people in it. He laughed under his breath. You trying to flatter me into a discount? No, I'm just being honest. The waitress came by with a refill for her tea. Helena glanced at Isaac's stained hands and the dark smudge on his collar. Have you always worked in repair? She asked. My old man ran the shop before me, he said. I took over when he passed. I used to think I'd leave, do something bigger, but life had other ideas. She didn't push, just listened. And you? He asked. What kind of business are you in? There was a beat of silence before she answered. Investments. Real estate, startups, a bit of everything. I figured as much, he said. That car didn't exactly scream budget conscious. She smiled. It wasn't supposed to. It was a gift from someone who wanted to impress me. Did it work? For a minute. They sat in silence for a while, the clatter of dishes and soft music filling the space between them. Listen, Helena said after a moment. Would you mind showing me around a bit? I've seen maps and photos, but there's only so much you can learn from behind a screen. You want a tour? From someone who knows the place. Someone who's not trying to sell me anything. He hesitated, thinking of the list of repairs waiting for him back at the shop. Then he thought of Nora. My daughter's with her sitter until 5, he said. I've got a couple hours. Perfect, she said, standing. Lead the way. Isaac drove them in his truck, Helena looking out the window as they passed the modest storefronts and tree-lined streets. He took her to the overlook near the reservoir, where the whole valley stretched out below them in shades of green and gold. She stepped out, the wind tugging at her hair as she leaned against the railing. It's beautiful, she said softly. Peaceful. People here work hard, he said. Not a lot of glamour, but they take care of each other. That's worth something. She looked at him, her expression unreadable. You really love it here. I love my daughter, he said. And she loves it here. That's enough. When they got back into the truck, her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then slipped it back into her purse without answering. Everything all right? He asked. It can wait. Back in town, she asked him to drop her at a small inn on the west side. As he pulled up, she turned to him. Would you and Nora have dinner with me tomorrow night? He blinked. You want to take us out? I'd like to. Somewhere nice. I already asked the innkeeper about a place with a private room, so Nora's not overwhelmed. He hesitated. You don't have to. I want to, she said firmly. And before you say no, I already made the reservation. He shook his head, both amused and unsure. All right, we'll be there. She touched his arm briefly before stepping out. Good. I'll see you then. Isaac watched her walk inside, something shifting in his chest he hadn't felt in a long time. Not since before his world had turned upside down. He didn't know who exactly Helena James was beyond the polished surface, but he knew one thing for sure. She was nothing like anyone he'd ever met. Nora tugged at the hem of her cardigan as Isaac knelt to tie her shoes, his fingers fumbling slightly. He glanced up at her, then at the mirror near the front door. Her curls were a little wild, her cheeks flushed with excitement. You sure you're ready for this, birthday girl? He asked, double knotting the laces. She nodded so fast her ponytail bounced. She said it's a fancy place. Do I look fancy? He stood and brushed a few crumbs off his shirt. You look better than fancy. You look like a star. Nora giggled and twirled, then paused. Is she going to wear a crown? Like a real one? Isaac chuckled. I doubt it. He glanced at the clock. Just past 6. The babysitter, Clara, had dropped Nora off an hour ago after watching her for the afternoon. He still wasn't sure why Helena had insisted on a dinner like this private space, pre-ordered menu, even offered to cover their ride. He'd refused the car service, but everything else about tonight felt far outside the world he was used to. They arrived at the Hilltop restaurant just as the sun dipped low, casting the sky in a deep amber hue. The building looked like something out of a glossy travel magazine. Arched stone walls, ivy climbing along trellises, warm light spilling from tall windows. A valet opened the door, and Isaac carried Nora up the steps. They were led through a quiet corridor past clinking glasses and soft piano music into a private dining room lit by a chandelier that shimmered like starlight. Helena stood near the window, her hair in soft waves, the fabric of her dress catching the light in a way that made Isaac's breath hitch. Nora ran to her with a grin. You look like a movie. Helena crouched to her level. So do you. Is that glitter on your shoes? Nora nodded proudly. They're my birthday shoes. Helena looked up at Isaac. You both made it. We said we would. A waiter appeared with drinks, lemonade for Nora, something darker for the adults. The table was already set for 3, with cloth napkins folded into delicate shapes and silverware so polished it reflected the chandelier above. As they sat, Helena reached under the table and pulled out a small box wrapped in navy paper. She slid it toward Nora. Happy early birthday. Nora gasped and tore it open, revealing a delicate music box shaped like a carousel. She opened it, and a soft melody floated out as tiny horses spun inside. This is the prettiest thing I ever saw, she whispered. Helena leaned in. It plays a different song each time you open it. There are 6. Nora turned the dial again, awestruck. Isaac watched her, his jaw tense. He bought a small craft kit for her birthday with his last paycheck. This was something else entirely. Helena turned to him. I hope it's all right. I didn't want to overstep. He kept his voice steady. She loves it. They ordered seared duck, roasted vegetables, something with truffle oil he couldn't pronounce, and for a while, Isaac let himself enjoy the warmth and Nora's laughter, the way Helena listened to her every word as if it mattered. But halfway through the meal, he leaned in slightly. Why are you really here, Helena? She blinked slowly. You mean tonight, or in this town? Both. She set down her fork. I didn't lie when I said I was scouting properties. But that's not the whole truth. He folded his arms. Okay. I own a private investment firm. We acquire land, fund developments, back innovative projects. I've been looking for somewhere different. Somewhere with soul. So this was business, he said, his voice flat. At first. And now. Her eyes didn't waver. Now I don't know what it is. I just know I didn't want to leave without seeing you again. He leaned back. Is this some kind of experiment? Rich girl slums it with the mechanic for a week. No, she said sharply. Don't do that. Don't paint me with that brush. Then help me understand. She took a breath. I grew up around people who measured affection in transactions. Money was how they showed love. And when I stopped playing by those rules, I got cut off. I built my own world, my own company, my own name. Isaac's jaw tightened. So now you're just passing through? Another town, another story? I haven't decided yet. He glanced at Nora, who was humming softly and spinning the dial on the music box again. You're not the only one with something to lose here, he said. She looked down. I know. The tension lingered as dessert was served, some elaborate chocolate thing Nora immediately dove into. Helena remained quiet, letting them talk, letting the silence mend what it could. As they walked out into the cool night air, Helena carried the music box for Nora, who was half asleep in Isaac's arms. I'll walk you to the truck, she said quietly. They moved slowly down the path, the gravel crunching beneath their shoes. I didn't come here looking for this, she said once they reached the curb. But I'm not walking away from it either. Not unless you tell me to. Isaac shifted Nora in his arms. This isn't a life where people like you stick around. Then maybe I'm not who you think I am. He studied her face, the honesty in her eyes. Don't prove me right. She reached into her coat and handed him a card. Not a business card, just a folded note with a key inside. If you ever want to talk, this opens the gate at the house I'm renting off Maple Lane. I'll be there for a few more days. He took it, but didn't say anything. Good night, Isaac. He watched her turn and walk back toward the restaurant, her figure fading into the darkness. He placed Nora gently in the truck, brushing a curl off her forehead. As he slid into the driver's seat, the music box still playing softly in her lap, he turned the key. The engine started with a low rumble, but nothing inside him felt settled. The gate creaked open as Isaac stepped through it, the key still warm from his palm. The house beyond was quiet, its white columns bathed in the soft glow of porch lights. He paused just before the steps, running a hand over the back of his neck. The gravel path behind him was empty. He'd left Nora with Clara for the night, something he rarely did, but tonight felt different. He didn't know why he'd come. Maybe it was the way Helena hadn't tried to convince him of anything. Maybe it was the silence in the truck after he'd dropped her off, or the note she'd tucked into the envelope under the key. I don't want to change your life. I just want to be in it. He knocked once. The door opened almost immediately. Helena stood barefoot, wearing a navy sweater that hung past her hips and a look that showed nothing but calm. You came, she said. I didn't want to wonder what might have happened if I didn't. She stepped back to let him in. The entryway was warm, the faint scent of cedar and orange peel lingering in the air. A record played softly in another room, something instrumental and low. He followed her into a sunken living room, where a small fire crackled in the hearth. No wine glasses, no staged lighting. Just her. I didn't think you would, she said, sitting on the edge of the couch. I almost didn't. What changed your mind? He didn't answer right away. He sat across from her, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. I've spent the last 6 years trying to keep everything steady for Nora. I've said no to a lot of things. To people. To chances. Because I thought if I let anything in, something would slip. But this doesn't feel like a slip, she said quietly. No, he admitted. It feels like something I've been missing. She looked up at him then, and for the first time, there wasn't a trace of doubt in her eyes. I'm not leaving tomorrow, she said. He blinked. What do you mean? I postponed the return flight, and I called off the team that was supposed to assess properties out here. You're pulling the project? I'm not here to transform this town into something it's not, she said. I came because I thought I could find something real, something grounded. I didn't expect it to be you. Or Nora. But now that I have this, her voice caught slightly, I can't pretend I didn't. Isaac's voice was low. You're a billionaire. You could live anywhere. Do anything. I've already done all of that, she said. And I've never had a day that meant more to me than that night in your truck with your daughter coloring squirrels. I'm not chasing flash anymore. I'm chasing what feels like home. He looked at the flicker of the fire. And this? This is home. She nodded. If you'll let me be part of it. He stood and crossed to the window, hands in his pockets. The yard beyond was still, the moonlight catching on the edge of the wrought iron fence. You scare the hell out of me, he said. Because I'm different? Because you make me want things again. She walked to stand beside him, close but not touching. I'm not asking you to change your life. I'm asking if there's space for me in it. He turned to face her. What happens when the world you left behind comes looking for you? I'll answer the door with you beside me. He breathed out slowly. You've got a way of making it all feel simple. It's not simple, she said. It's just worth it. He reached out, brushing her hand with his. She laced their fingers together without hesitation. Come back to the house, he said. Tomorrow. Nora's birthday. She wants to bake a cake from scratch. It'll probably be a disaster. I make a very good mess, she said. He laughed, the tension in his shoulders easing for the first time in hours. Then we'll save you a spoon. When he walked out later that night, the sky was deep blue and the wind had quieted. The gate clicked shut behind him, but it didn't feel like a goodbye. The next morning, Nora was already in the kitchen with flour on her cheeks when Helena arrived, a canvas bag hanging from her shoulder. She knelt beside Nora and pulled out a chef's hat, then another. Official baking team, she said, handing one to Isaac. Nora squealed. Can we make it purple? Only if we survive the frosting first, Isaac said. The day unraveled in laughter and sugar, the three of them covered in icing and surrounded by the smell of warm vanilla. Helena didn't hover or perform. She blended in like she'd been part of it all along. That night, after Nora had fallen asleep with frosting on her nose and the music box still playing faintly by her bed, Isaac stepped onto the porch where Helena waited, arms folded against the chill. I've never seen her that happy, she said. Me neither. They stood in silence, the stars scattered above them like glitter on black velvet. You know I'm not going anywhere tomorrow, she said. I know. And if you ever want more than this, more than just visits and frosting, I'm ready. He looked at her, eyes steady. So am I. She leaned into him, and he wrapped an arm around her waist, pulling her in as if he'd done it 100 times before. Not out of impulse, not out of hope, out of certainty. Because sometimes, the most unexpected roads don't lead you away, they bring you home. Isaac stood on the edge of the orchard behind his house, his boots sinking slightly into the soft earth. The sun had just begun to rise, casting long amber streaks through the bare apple trees. A light morning mist clung to the ground, curling around the trunks like whispers. Helena was a few paces ahead, her coat unbuttoned, hands tucked into her pockets as she turned to look at him. I can't remember the last time I was awake this early and didn't hate it, she said, her voice carrying gently through the quiet. You're not from around here if you think this is early, Isaac replied with a half laugh. This is sleeping in for most folks. She smiled, but her eyes were thoughtful. You know, when I first got here, I didn't understand why people stayed. I thought small towns were places people escaped from. And now, I think they're the only places where you can actually breathe. He stepped beside her, their shoulders barely brushing. You could have gone back to your world by now. No one would have blamed you. I've had enough of that world. This time, I'm choosing something that feels permanent. Isaac looked at the trees, the branches still bare but readying for bloom. Funny thing about permanence. It doesn't come from the big moments. It's in the quiet ones. Like this. Helena didn't say anything right away. Then she reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a folded sheet of paper, handing it to him. He opened it slowly, eyes scanning the page. This is a property deed. I bought the old Harper Mill. The one by the river, she said. It's going to be a community center. After-school programs, a local art space, maybe even a weekend farmer's market. He looked up sharply. That's not just investment. That's putting down roots. She nodded. I want to build something that gives more than it takes. And I want you to be part of it. Isaac folded the paper carefully. You don't need my help to do this. I don't need it, she said, but I want it. I want to make something real with someone who knows what that means. He studied her face, every line and shadow, and saw none of the distance that had once been there. Just honesty and something that looked a lot like forever. All right, he said finally. We do it together. Later that week, the town gathered in the old church hall for the spring fundraiser. Isaac helped arrange tables while Nora insisted on wearing her butterfly wings. Fluttering between guests with a clipboard and a job, she gave herself to collect names for the fun list, a scribbled roster of anyone who danced or laughed out loud. Helena arrived with a basket of baked goods she'd made herself, her hair pinned up, a soft lavender dress brushing her knees. Isaac met her at the door, and without a word, took the basket from her and laced his fingers through hers. It was the first time they'd walked into a room together like that, no secrets, no hesitations. Just two people who had chosen each other. Everyone staring, Helena whispered. Let them, he said simply. The music started, and Nora tugged at Isaac's sleeve. Daddy, You promised to spin me. Come on, then. He scooped her up and twirled her across the dance floor, her giggles filling the room. His eyes met Helena's over Nora's shoulder, and something in them held steady, like a vow neither of them needed to speak aloud. Later, while Nora dozed curled up on a bench with her wings askew and a cookie still clutched in one hand, Helena and Isaac stepped outside. The night was warm, the stars strewn across the sky like scattered salt. I used to think love was something that had to be earned with effort or sacrifice, she said softly. But this feels different. It feels like coming home. Isaac leaned against the railing. I used to think I had to do everything alone. For Nora. For myself. I thought needing someone was weakness. And now I think it's the strongest thing I've ever done. She reached for his hand. Then let's keep doing it. Every day. Together. He turned to face her fully, his voice low. Move in with us. Helena blinked. You mean into the house? No, he said. Into our life. All the way. I want you there when Nora loses her first tooth. When she gets her first crush. I want you there when the roof leaks, when the truck finally dies, when the orchard blooms. Her eyes glistened, but she laughed. You're really leading with the roof leaking? It's a package deal, he said. But I promise I'll always show up. I'll never let you wonder where you stand. She stepped into his arms then, her body fitting against his with the ease of something well-earned. When she kissed him, it wasn't rushed or desperate. It was full and deep and sure. I'm in, she whispered. All the way. They didn't rush back inside. They stood under the stars, the quiet wrapping around them, more intimate than any words could be. Months passed, and spring gave way to summer. The community center opened with a ribbon cutting that drew the entire town. Nora wore a crown of sunflowers and insisted Helena do the honors. Isaac stood beside them, one hand on Helena's back, the other holding a lemonade Nora had made far too sweet. The three of them became something steady, not flashy, not perfect, but real. On a warm August afternoon, Isaac led Helena into the orchard, now thick with fruit. Under the tallest tree, a small table was set checkered cloth, 2 glasses, and a single ring box. No speeches, he said, taking her hand. Just stay. Helena looked at him, her voice catching. Always. He slipped the ring onto her finger, and they sat beneath the branches, the breeze carrying the scent of apples and something sweeter still. Not because they needed forever to begin, but because they'd already started it.